Hello, today is February 28th, the end of the month. So we're going to continue Iran. Today, last week we did Rouhani and Putin's agreement at Moscow.
Yes.
So today we're going to show you first of all the Middle East Cold War. This is 2017. Just briefly explain in English first, and Saudis and Iranians have never actually declared war on each other. Instead, they fight indirectly by supporting opposing sides in other countries and inciting conflict. This is known as a proxy warfare, and it's had a devastating effect on the region. Countries, especially poor ones, cannot function if they are larger countries staying within their border. And that is exactly what's happening in the Middle East. The Saudi-Iranian rivalry has become a fight over influence, and the whole region is a battlefield. Okay? それからですね、これちょっと、あれおかしいの、ちょっと隠れちゃった。OK。イランとサウジの冷戦についてその歴史的な背景からこのビデオを言ってます。イランが革命を起こしてから彼らの考えをアフガニスタン、イラク、サウジアラビアに展開してそれらの政府転覆を支援しだしました。1980年代にはサダム・フセインがイランに侵攻し、1988年までに100万人がこのイランとイラクの戦争で死にました。でサウジがイラクを支援したため、この時からサウジとの溝がイランとの関係として深まっていきました。アメリカはサダム・フセインの軍隊を倒してから、アメリカはこれ失敗しちゃって、結局イラクはですね、テロが拡張してしまいました。でサウジはスンニ派を支援し、イランはシア派をそのイラクの国の中でね、支援した。スンニっていうのはやっぱ愛することですね。でアラブの春ではサウジとイランとはそれぞれ反対の立場で、それぞれの国を支援しました。モロッコ、リビア、イエメン、シリア、カタール。この二国間の冷戦が今後どのような方向に展開するのか、まだわからない。あれこれなんで動かないの？
でも、サウジとカタールがアイシスをサポートしてるんですよね。
サウジとカタールはもう反目してるんですよ。絶好状態で。イランはカタールを支援しだしたの。
イランが
カタールを支援しだしたんだよ。
カタールを支援しだした。
だってサウジが、カタールを追い出しちゃったからね。絶好状態。
ああ、そう。
で、今こっち側の画面が凍ってんですけど、ビデオを見れますんで、ちょっとビデオを見ますね。
はい。
これは非常に10分ぐらいなんですけど、コンパクトにまとまっていて非常にいいビデオです。Okay.
The Middle East is one of the most complex regions in the world. Currently, there are 4 failing states and 3 wars, with major powers increasingly taking opposite sides. Countless armed militias and terrorist groups are spreading violence across borders. The region has seen conflict after conflict going back well into the 20th century. But among all the uprisings, civil wars, and insurgencies, 2 countries always seem to be involved: Saudi Arabia and Iran. They're bitter rivals, and their feud is the key to understanding conflicts in the Middle East. The Saudis and Iranians have never actually declared war on each other. Instead, they fight indirectly by supporting opposing sides in other countries and inciting conflicts. This is known as proxy warfare, and it's had a devastating effect on the region. Countries, especially poor ones, can't function if there are larger countries pulling strings within their borders.
Both the Saudis and the Iranians see these civil wars as both tremendous threats and also potentially enormous opportunities.
The Saudi-Iranian rivalry has become a fight over influence, and the whole region is a battlefield. It's why the rivalry is being called the Cold War. most famous Cold War was fought for 40 years between the United States and Soviet Union.
Looking forward to the day when their flag would fly over the entire world.
They never declared war on each other, but clashed in proxy wars around the world. Each side supported dictators, rebel groups, and intervened in civil wars to contain the other. Like the US and Soviet Union, Saudi Arabia and Iran are two powerful rivals. But instead of fighting for world dominance, they're fighting over control of the Middle East. In order to understand the Saudi-Iranian rivalry, let's go back to the origins of each country. In the early 1900s, the Arabian Peninsula was a patchwork of tribes under the control of the Ottoman Empire. After World War I, the empire collapsed, leaving these tribes to fight each other over power. One tribe from the interior, the Al Saud, eventually conquered most of the peninsula. In 1932, they were recognized as the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. 6 years later, massive oil reserves were discovered in Saudi Arabia, and in an instant the Saudi monarchy was rich. That oil money built roads and cities all around the desert country, and it helped forge an alliance with the US. On the eastern side of the Persian Gulf, another country was emerging, but having a much harder time. Iran also had massive oil reserves and an even bigger Muslim population, but constant foreign intervention was creating chaos. Since the 18th century, Iran had been invaded by the Russians and the British twice. In 1953, the US secretly staged a coup, removing the popular Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. In his place, they propped up a monarch, Reza Shah, who was aggressively reforming Iran into a secular, westernized country. But he harbored corruption and terrorized the population with his secret police, the Savak. By the 1970s, both Saudi Arabia and Iran had oil-based economies and had governments heavily backed by the US. But the feelings among each population were very different.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, the Shah of Iran, powerful as he was, simply didn't have the same control over his people, or ultimately the same legitimacy and affection that the Saudi people felt toward their monarchy at that point in time.
That's because Iran's Muslims felt stifled by the Shah's reformations, and by the end of the decade, they finally fought back.
Iran's Islamic Revolution overthrew a powerful regime that boasted military might.
It's really in 1979, when Ayatollah Khomeini and the Islamic Revolution overthrow the Shah, that the real...
This is tremendous, surprise.
Surprise.
Yeah, by United States of America, because they most concerned about, this is not communist, Muslim, right?
Muslim, yes.
Never expected Muslim country were going to be against America in the Middle East. So, do you remember the American embassy is occupied by
Yes.
Iranian government? Those sort of things happened at that time, right? And still, America is Trump tried to renegotiate or try to against or defy the nuclear deal with Iran, because Iran is a very powerful country, and very exceptionally they could survive. Usually against America is to beat those countries like Libya,
Yes.
kill Gaddafi,
Yes.
and any country against America they try to attack them. But Iran is just only one exception. Except, of course, Russia and China, America cannot attack them because of their size of power. But the third one, Iran. Okay? America cannot attack Iran.
Due to Muslim?
No. The side of
The size of the
country,
country.
big power they have. So America cannot attack. So now is in the world, America cannot attack three countries: Russia, China, and Iran. So in the Middle East, Trump supports Saudi Arabia against Iran. So that's, he said, proxy war. So America don't want them to be stabilized in Middle East, and keep turmoil situation will keep going to eliminate their power in the Middle East, right? So this is their goal and political goal in the Middle East. But actually, Saudi Arabia is Salman. He tried to beat Yemen and proxy war against Iran, but they cannot do this. Okay, America willingly to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia, but they couldn't success. Iran is they have very strong power themselves, and also they won with Russia won against ISIL, not only the IS but also insurgent group against Assad. So they're working with Assad and Russia, and Iran is getting power. And they were going to be dominant in those areas instead of Saudi Arabia, right?
Tension between Iran and Saudi Arabia began.
Ayatollah Khomeini was a Muslim clergyman who preached against Western-backed secular monarchies. He advocated for a government that was popular, Islamic, and led by the clergy. And in 1979, he led a revolution to establish just that. It was a massive international event that prompted reactions around the world, especially in Saudi Arabia.
The Iranian Revolution terrified the government of Saudi Arabia. They were fearful that Ayatollah Khomeini would inspire their populations to rise up against them exactly the way that he had caused the Iranian population to rise up against the Shah.
And there was a religious threat too. Up until now, the Saudis had claimed to be the leaders of the Muslim world, largely because Islam's two holiest sites, Mecca and Medina, are in Saudi Arabia. But Khomeini claimed his popular revolution made Iran the legitimate Muslim state. And there is another divide. Saudi Arabia's population is mostly Sunni, the majority sect of Islam, while Khomeini and Iran are mostly Shia.
Westerners always make a mistake in drawing an analogy between the Sunni-Shia split and the Protestant-Catholic split within Christianity. The Sunni-Shia split was never as violent. And in much of the Islamic world, when Sunnis and Shia were living in close proximity, they got along famously well.
So while the Sunni-Shia split was not a reason for the rivalry, it was an important division. After the revolution, the Saudis' fears came to life when Iran began exporting its revolution. This CIA report from 1980 details how the Iranians started helping groups, mostly Shia, trying to overthrow governments in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Saudi Arabia.
And they prompted the Saudis to redouble their efforts to fight against Iran.
They bolstered their alliance with the U.S. and formed the GCC, an alliance with other Gulf monarchies. The stage was set for conflict.
War in the Gulf. Iraq invaded Iran in 7 areas. With a 5-to-1 superiority, Iraqi forces moved quickly.
The rise of Iran as a regional power threatened other neighboring countries as well. In September 1980, Iraq, under the rule of dictator Saddam Hussein, invaded Iran. He was hoping to stop the Iranian Revolution, gain power, and annex some of Iran's oil resources.
Oh, this time is
They
America.
didn't get far.
America supported Saddam Hussein against Iran. Ayatollah Khomeini.
1980s.
1980. And he used chemical weapons, right? Just mentioned here.
The war bogged down into a stalemate, complete with trench warfare, chemical weapons, and heavy civilian casualties. When Iran started winning, the Saudis panicked and came to Iraq's rescue. They provided money, weapons, and logistical help.
So it becomes critical to the Saudis that they build up Iraq and build it up into a wall that can hold back the Iranian torrent that they have unleashed.
This Saudi help allowed Iraq to fight until 1988. By then, nearly 1 million people had died. The Iranians largely blamed the Saudis for the war, and the feud escalated. Fast forward 15 years, and Iraq again became the scene of a proxy war. In 2003, the U.S. invaded Iraq and overthrew Saddam Hussein. Neither Saudi Arabia or Iran wanted this to happen, since Iraq had been acting as a buffer between them. But problems arose when the U.S. struggled to replace Saddam.
The United States has no idea what it's doing in Iraq after 2003, and it makes one mistake after another that creates a security vacuum, a failed state, and drives Iraq into all-out civil war.
Without a government, armed militias took control of Iraq, splintering the population. Sunni and Shia.
So many people talking about that. This is Saudi Arabia. Finally, they supported ISIL, right? At this stage.
Militias suddenly sprang up all over the country. Many were radical Islamist groups who saw an opportunity to gain power amidst the chaos. These militias were ready-made proxies for Saudi Arabia and Iran, and they both seized the opportunity to try and gain power. The Saudis started sending money and weapons to the Sunni militias, and Iran the Shia. Iraq was suddenly a proxy war, with Saudi Arabia and Iran supporting opposing sides. That trend continued into the Arab Spring, a series of anti-monarchy, pro-democracy protests that swept through the Middle East in 2011. And this had very different consequences for Saudi Arabia and Iran.
That is terrifying to the Saudis, who are the ultimate status quo power. They want the region stable, and they don't want anybody rising up and overthrowing a sclerotic, autocratic government for fear that it might inspire their own people to do the same. The Iranians are the ultimate anti-status quo power. They have been trying for decades to overturn the regional order.
Each country threw their weight behind different groups, all over the Middle East. Just like in Iraq, the Saudis began supporting Sunni groups and governments, while Iran helped Shia groups rise up against them. For example, in Tunisia, the Saudis backed a dictator while the Iranians stoked protests. In Bahrain, Iran supported Shia leaders seeking to overthrow the government. Saudi Arabia, in turn, sent troops to help quash the unrest. Both got involved in Libya, Lebanon, and Morocco as well. As Saudi Arabia and Iran put more and more pressure on these countries, they began to collapse. Now the feud has gone a step further, with both countries deploying their own militaries. In Yemen, the Saudi military is on the ground helping the central government. They are fighting the rebels called the Houthis, who are an Iranian proxy group. And the reverse is happening in Syria. The Iranian military is fighting side by side with militias, some of them extremist groups like Hezbollah, in support of dictator Bashar al-Assad. They are fighting rebel Sunni groups who are Saudi proxies. The more civil wars that broke out in the Middle East, the more Saudi Arabia and Iran became involved.
Neither the government of Saudi Arabia nor the government of Iran are looking for a fight. But the problem is that these civil wars create circumstances that no one could have predicted. Both the Iranians and the Saudis feel their vital national interests are threatened, are in jeopardy, because of different things going on in these civil wars, things that they blame each other for.
Now the Cold War is drawing in other countries. The Saudi government is threatening Qatar, a tiny Gulf state that was developing ties with Iran. Meanwhile, in Syria and Iraq, the terrorist group ISIS is nearing defeat, and both the Saudis and Iranians are angling to take control of that territory. It's a Cold War that's becoming incredibly unpredictable. As the Middle East continues to destabilize, it's hard to say how far these countries will go.
Okay, this is interesting history of Middle East until now. So actually, still, as you know, the Syrian civil war is not finalized yet, and you like Turkey now get inside Syria and beat against Kurd, as you know. And but Turkey is recently building established relationship with Russia.
Yes.
But Russia is not against Kurd.
No.
So Russia is supporting Syria. Of course, Iran supporting Syria. So Turkey is some little bit confusing or puzzling situation in the Middle East. So we don't know what's going on in future. Syria, the civil war is finished, looks like finished, but still insurgent group against Syria government. They have still many, and recently Americans still supporting them, and air bomb to kill the Russian soldiers inside Syria. But Russia is pushing, she didn't say anything, but actually Russian soldiers dead by American bombardment.
Is that so?
Yeah, very recently. So still the current situation is confusing. And Saudi Arabia is currently is not much involved in Syria war. Instead, they much more focus on Yemen. But Yemen is Houthi group is supported by Iran, and they are still, struggling, battling inside Yemen. And Trump sold weapon to Saudi Arabia for air raid weapon, but no solution is going to be found yet. Right? So it means Middle East will not going to be stable, but Iran is itself is I think revolutionary army is very powerful, very strong, and not like United States, they don't spend so much money for this, but for against insurgent people. So also the other issue is American Trump is trying to reconsider nuclear deal, right? But this is the other issue. But Westerners except America is already settled down for agreement for nuclear deal, and they will not change their strategy because, of course, Western country they have skeptical for their Baltic missile development, and also the Iran supporting Hezbollah. And the Westerners, Hezbollah is, they define the terrorism group, but actually not terrorism. This is actually military in Jordan. So sort of things, but still they try to keep a promise for the agreement of nuclear deal. So America is, they don't know how to containment of Iran in Middle East. Okay? And they try to support Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia cannot moving around in Middle East because of Yemen. Right? And they are not strong for the battle or war, waging war, because they do not have so much experience for waging war. So, and so it means we don't know what's going on, but actually the Middle East is Russia and Iran and Syria. We're going to be they have so much confidence to be more stabilized in those areas instead of still insurgent militant against Syria group is exist in those areas supported by United States, but Russia and Iran have confidence to eliminate all those soldiers group, even if America tries to make bomb. Air bombing, but it's not easy to close down Middle East turmoil. But it takes couple of years. But I believe Iran and Russia group will get stabilized in those areas.
They will dominate.
Yeah, but next step is we need to concern for Afghanistan. America sent troops try to control Afghanistan, but how many people there? Just 15,000 people there. American soldiers is not enough. Before they have 50 or 60,000 or more than that soldiers there, but still cannot be stabilized Afghanistan and Taliban. So I think the next step is I'm sure I had for sure Russia and Iran. Afghanistan is not Middle East, maybe South Asia, right? Middle East or the middle of just the area. But next step is Russia and Iran will going to do something for Afghanistan after stabilizing Middle East. So they're going to Iran will finally Iran will going to be dominant in Middle East, even if America supports Saudi Arabia. Because oil price, Saudi Arabia will not, oil prices, I think, will not going up to $100 next several years. So it means Saudi Arabia, they cannot influence in OPEC, or they cannot influence in Middle East anymore. Furthermore, America's oil production is gradually, already superseded Saudi oil production rate. Is more increasing than America, So
shell
shale oil. So it means I believe also Salman is not so much clever because he kicked Qatar out from the OPEC group, right? Or Saudi group, right? So it means Qatar is closer to Iran. So sort of things happen, but I think Saudi is not clever to doing the political issue in Middle East. So this is my observation for this Iranian movement. Okay. So we try to do in another video. Okay, just one. This one. That one is which one? We deleted Hassan Bukhari's interview. Next one. Oh, this is please. Oh my God. Oops.
Did it freeze?
Please. Oh my God. Microsoft Word. Okay. Did I change something? Yes, maybe I just add word or something. Okay, this is let me try. This is oh, this is not Latin America. Oh no, oh this one. Okay, just we're going to move here and wait for this to finish. And Middle East Cold War, just I'll show you over there. And Trump signal. Oh, this one is Trump.
Trump's in the not a lot of Iran nuclear.
It's been just over 2 years since the Iran nuclear agreement was signed under the Obama administration. But President Trump may very well be on the way toward pulling the United States out of the deal. John Yang has that.
When will this video?
Huh?
When will this video upload?
Oh, okay. This is not long ago.
Oh, okay.
Not 6 months ago.
6
8
months ago.
months ago.
Yes.
Trump ran against the agreement, but President Trump has twice followed the State Department's advice and certified that Iran is complying with it. But now, in a Wall Street Journal interview published today, Mr. Trump indicates he's willing to overrule the State Department when the next certification is due in October.
We've given them the benefit of every doubt, but we're doing very detailed studies. And
oh, just a minute. This he speaks. This is winding 1.5 times. Okay, just you can read this one. We've given them the benefit of every doubt. Okay, this one. This one gives, oh, this word, I didn't explain. Explain word first. Give someone the benefit of the doubt. 人を信用することにする. Give someone the benefit of the doubt. Did you know this one?
I know the phrase. Yes.
Okay. Reciprocal. Reciprocal. Reciprocal is the word, or some, what is the noun? Reciprocity. Okay, and certification, certified, snapback, malign. What's malign?
Malign. I don't know.
Myopic. Yes, this is famous word, malign.
Malign, okay.
Myopic and paralyzed. Sunset provision. Sunset provision is sunset law, American. 廃止期日が明記されていて、議会が再認可しなければ、自動的に廃止される。サンセット。breakout capability。核開発能力と breakout capability。短期間での開発能力。ここではこう使ってる。covert。sneaker。fortify。certify, rectify, predicate, déjà vu. déjà vu は、なんか買って見たことあるようなことをこう誤解する。hiccup. 100じゃね。hiccup. erratic. erratic. erratic, erratic, bound by, snap back, egregiously, okay, so many words, so just so we've given them the benefit of every doubt. But we are doing very detailed studies.
Personally, I have great respect
And personally, I have great respect for my people.
for my people. If it was up to me, I would have had them.
If it was up to me, I would have had them non-compliant, 180 degree vision. Do you expect them to be declared non-compliant? Mono-compliant. Mono-compliant. Mono-compliant, what does it mean? Okay, let me try to use it. I didn't use it. Mono-compliant.
You put M. First letter is N. First letter. You put mo. That's no. N-O.
I know.
Unno-san, your first letter is
Non-compliant.
N. Yes, N. There you go. Non.
No word. No.
You have a no. There you go.
Still no.
Non. Then C-O. After C, put O.
Okay.
Non-com. And I and L is opposite. Non-compliant. Yeah. That's non-compliant. That should be.
But no word.
Then how about compliant? Just compliant. There you go.
Okay, non-compliant. 言いなりにならない。
Yes, there you go.
Non-compliant. Do you expect them to be declared non-compliant?
Personally, I did.
So pause for a minute. Hold on. So
Personally, I do.
So we're giving them the benefit every day.
It
We're doing very detailed studies.
It means yes, I do mean I don't believe them. Personally, I do means I don't.
So I don't believe them, and personally, I have a great respect for my people. And if it was up to me, I would have had them non-compliant, so not to obey, and we expect them to be declared non-compliant next time, not to obey. So continue not to obey. Okay.
What? I don't believe them. Yes, I do.
What would it mean if Mr. Trump said Iran is not complying? What's at stake here? We get two views. First, Rob Malley is here in the studio as Special Assistant to President Barack Obama. He was the lead senior White House negotiator for the agreement. He's now a vice president of the International Crisis Group. And joining us from Toronto is Mark Dubowitz. He's chief executive of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, a Washington, D.C.-based think tank. He's been advising the Trump administration on Iran policy. Rob, let me start with you.
Okay, he's going to speak out something, but his position is very difficult to explain. Why try to abolish or why try to deny the Iranian deal? He explained something, but it doesn't make sense. But listen.
With you, what's your response to
Can you raise the
what
volume?
the president said? I should also point out that in
Already?
that
Or just okay? Just
he went on to say that he thinks Iran is taking advantage of this country. He said they've taken advantage of a president named Barack Obama who didn't know what the hell he was doing.
I won't respond to that, but let's get the facts straight. We have now, since President Trump has been in office, twice the administration certified that Iran was in compliance with the deal. Twice the administration waived the sanctions, which is a way of indicating that it's mutually reciprocal. This is the administration's response to the fact that Iran is doing its share, we do our share.
Huh?
This is something.
It's been just over 2 years since the Iran nuclear agreement was.
180 days
He was the lead senior White House negotiator for the agreement for the studio. As special assistant to President Barack Obama, he was the lead senior White House agent for defense of democracy. As a interview, he went on to say that he thinks Iran is taking advantage of this. Taking advantage of a president named Barack Obama who didn't know what the hell he was doing.
I won't respond to that, but let's get the facts straight. We have now, since President Trump has been in office, twice the administration certified that Iran was in compliance with the deal. Twice the administration waived the sanctions, which is a way of indicating that it's mutually reciprocal. This is the administration's response to the fact that Iran is doing its share, we do our share. Twice the international agency that's responsible for deciding whether the sides are in compliance, whether Iran is in compliance with its nuclear restrictions, the International Atomic Energy Agency, twice since President Trump has been in office, it has said that Iran is living up to its deal, and twice the Joint Commission, which is the commission formed by all of the members countries that negotiated the deal, including the United States, twice, including recently, they have said that Iran is in compliance. So maybe the president has information that he hasn't shared with anyone else. But at this point, it's clear that for almost every objective observer, the subjective observers may have another view, but every objective observer has said Iran is in compliance. So I don't know where he comes up.
It means even if Trump against it, but everybody supported for this Iranian deal, right? Twice.
With saying that he knows, but others don't know, even his cabinet disagrees apparently, but he knows that Iran is not in compliance. So that would really be breaking our own obligations under the deal, but also breaking with our allies, which would put us in a very difficult position.
Mark Dubowitz, you are advising the administration. Obviously, I
presume this is Trump's side.
About that advice, make that advice public. But what should the president do? What do you think the president should do when this next certification comes up?
So the president should make it very clear that Iran is not in compliance with the deal. It's been very clear in the Secretary Tillerson's letter to Congress. Again, made it very clear that there are incremental violations of the deal. The president actually didn't certify that Iran is in full compliance with the deal. He merely said that Iran meets certain conditions that were laid by Congress, which didn't require full compliance. So my advice to the president would be state the facts, which is Iran is incrementally violating the deal. But unless there's a material...
But this is, I don't understand. He said incrementally violating the deal. Okay? Incrementally violating the deal. You're gradually, invading the deal compliance.
A breach of the JCPOA, the nuclear deal, don't go to the Joint Commission, don't snap back the UN sanctions, but use that noncompliance as a predicate to roll out a much more comprehensive Iran policy that deals with all forms of Iranian malign behavior, not only nuclear misbehavior, but Iran's malign behavior across multiple fronts. That's a full comprehensive policy, and it gets us away from this myopic focus on the nuclear deal, which I think paralyzed U.S.-Iran policy under President Obama.
Rob Malley, myopic focus on the nuclear deal, or should there be consideration of things across a broader consideration, as he says?
There has been, and there'll continue to be. I mean, what the Obama administration, what President Obama did, was take one issue, which was a critical issue. Not only our national security experts, but Israeli and other experts said, if Iran were to rush to a bomb, we would be in a very difficult situation. Let's look at the case of North Korea. We wouldn't want to see a North Korea in the Persian Gulf. So we have that was a priority at that point, was not to give up on the other issues. Let's at least make sure that Iran is not in a position to get a bomb. At the same time, let's push back on their regional activities. Let's see what we can do about the ballistic missiles. But the deal itself, and deliberately, was about this issue. It wasn't a case of myopia. It was a case of, we're going to deal with this issue. We solved it, at least for the time being. And let's work on the other issues at the same time. There's nothing in the nuclear deal that would prevent us from taking action against Iran if it engaged in terrorism, ballistic missiles, human rights violations. The question at the heart of what the president said is whether we are going to continue to honor our part of the deal, to make sure that Iran also honors its part and doesn't rush to nuclear bombs so that we don't.
He's talking about just the common sense or Western countries thinking, what kind of thinking against you? Toward Iran, he's speaking of, okay, just nuclear deal is one issue, and Baltic missile, and supporting terrorists, and human rights problem. sort of things he speak up. This is the other issues. But now, first of all, they success to make agreement with Iran for settling down for the nuclear deal. Then we need to consider for the following issues with Iran. But Trump is going to against for the all of those, just not only the nuclear deal, but he complained everything else. And Iran totally he's there wrong something. But this is, I think, short-sighted decision making. He said, right? Okay. Right?
Myopic.
Myopic. That's right. Myopic.
What we have now in North Korea. In North Korea, we have a country that has a nuclear bomb, and we have no visibility on what they're doing. In Iran, we have a country that doesn't have a nuclear bomb, and we have almost maximum visibility as a result of the deal in every aspect of their nuclear program.
Mark Tugowitz, what about that? The idea that it's better to know what's going on, to work within this agreement and know what Iran's doing.
Look, I'm glad Rob brought up the fatally flawed North Korea nuclear agreement, because the Iran nuclear agreement is similarly fatally flawed. It contains within it sunset provisions where the restrictions on Iran's nuclear program actually go away over time, and Iran can emerge by actually faithfully complying with the deal with an industrial-sized nuclear program, with near-zero nuclear breakout capability, with a much easier covert sneak-out capability, with an ICBM, with a powerful economy fortified against our ability to use sanctions, and with increased regional hegemony. So Rob is right. The deal temporarily pushed the Iranians further in terms of breakout, but over the medium term, Iran is going to emerge with everything it wants by faithfully complying with the deal. So we don't want another fatally flawed nuclear agreement like we had with North Korea. What we need to start dealing with is this flawed agreement. And I think the president has already made it very clear that he thinks this is a terrible deal. He thinks it's a fatally flawed deal. And I think my advice...
So it means he don't like Obama deal.
Well...
Right?
Well, basically...
So he is talking about many kind of claims. It doesn't make sense what he's talking about. He's talking about, okay, not only the nuclear deal, but also he said Baltic missile, and he's talking about the other issues, but this not make sense.
Well, I don't know, I don't think all the information is out here on table yet, but in my opinion, there's looking at the I don't know, history, or looking at how Iranian behaves in Middle East, there's a risk.
No. Trump is thinking overall issues. He don't like Iran. He don't like Obama deal. So this is very simple.
Well, why doesn't he like Iran?
Black people, black person. Obama.
Black?
Yeah, he hate. Trump hate black people.
So
he deny everything Obama's deal, like healthcare bill, right? And also this Iranian deal. But because Iranian deal, this is American president never talked with Iran for almost 40 years in the history. They didn't. Obama is the first person to settle down a deal with Iran. So he did tremendous, effort and big success, deal with Iran.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
38 years or 40 years, and the American president never talked with the Iranian president. So this is big deal, just, settled. So that is, this kind of issue, Trump don't like it. Okay, let's move on.
To him is, don't certify compliance and begin to lay the predicate for a massive pressure campaign and get the Iranians back to the table to negotiate a nuclear deal number 2 that addresses some of these fatally flawed elements of the deal, and by the way, gives us inspection rights into military sites, which right now we have in theory, but in practice the Iranians are not letting us into their military sites where they're likely to engage in nuclear weaponization activities like they have in the past. So we better rectify this fatally flawed deal where the Iranians are going to get a nuke, ICBMs, and they're going to have the ability to dominate the region like nothing we've seen before.
Rob Malley, what would be the consequences? What's at stake here? What would be the consequences if the president did say Iran is not living up to this deal?
Well, first I have to say, I'm a little bit confused about the argument that Mark was making. Is the argument that the deal is fatally flawed and therefore we shouldn't accept it, we should walk away, we should renegotiate it, which would be one path. Very dangerous, and I would get into that. Or is his view, the deal is okay for now, but there's over in 12, 13, 14, 15 years, there's some provisions that are going to expire, and so we should think of whether we can negotiate what happens afterwards. But in which case, we're going to have to give something to Iranians in return. The Iranians are not going to accept to negotiate more restrictions in exchange for nothing. So I think we need to clarify. Right now, we're in a much better position than we were at the time President Obama took office because we have these restrictions. And according to every inspection that has been done, every report by the IAEA, Iran is in compliance. Now, if tomorrow the president were to decide to announce that Iran is not in compliance, first of all, I think we would have a little bit of a deja vu in terms of Iraq. I think most people in the international community would believe that we're just fabricating evidence because we haven't shared it, because right now we're the only ones who are claiming that Iran is not in, or we would be the only ones claiming that. That would not put us in a strong position. If we were to do that and that's it, and continue to honor the deal, it would be a hiccup. It would once again signal to the world that we have a rather erratic administration. If he were then to impose sanctions, to reimpose the sanctions that were lifted, reimpose sanctions on Iran's nuclear program, then we would be in breach, and either Iran would itself say we're no longer bound by our own commitments, and we would have a possibility of Iran trying to acquire a nuclear bomb, or we'd be isolated in the international community because the Europeans, the Russians, the Chinese, everyone would say it's on you, it's not on Iran. Why would we want that?
Mark Tubowitz, I want you to respond. What would happen? What practically would happen if the president said they weren't complying, and then what should the next step be?
Well, actually, practically speaking, what Rob's not telling you is that if the president says they're not complying, but he doesn't say that they're in material breach, then actually nothing happens. Then we don't go to the Joint Commission, we don't snap back UN and US sanctions. We merely say Iran is engaging in incremental violations. And we know that the Iranians violate incrementally, not egregiously, even though over time the sum total of their incremental violations is always egregious. What Rob's not telling you is that he knows and we know that the Iranians have been incrementally violating this deal. They've exceeded heavy water caps. Heavy water is the essential ingredient you need for a plutonium bomb. They're testing more advanced centrifuges than they are permitted under the nuclear agreement. They've been illicitly procuring nuclear and ballistic missile technology.
What do you say?
What about the plutonium bomb? So basically, according to the Trump side, he's saying that Iran has been incrementally violating the rules that they originally agreed to.
This is not true. Okay, he's talking about
violating this deal.
violating deal. He said heavy water, right?
They have exceeded
the heavy water cap.
What is heavy water?
Heavy water, ウラニウムの重水
わかります。
重水ってヘビーウォーター。
でも重水って何ですか？
ヘビーウォーターってのは、アトミックボンブを作るための、原子力発電所よりもっと濃度の濃い、ウラニウム。
ああ、そうなんですか。
で、ヘビーウォーターキャップって制限を超えてる。でもそれ、彼が言ってるのは、何で言ってるのかっていうのは、証拠なんかないんですよ。
そうですね。
He said heavy water is the essential ingredient. Oh, yeah, of course, but they are testing more advanced centrifuge って5000とか7000とか9000の核弾機があるんですよね。それを今回の契約で、9000ぐらいあったやつを1000ぐらいにしたんですね。充水できないように。で、それに対して、いくらでもそれに対して、いや、1000じゃなくて3000でしょ、5000でしょっていうことはできるわけですよ。そんなこと隠してやってますよとか言えば。そういうこと。
要するに、医学のことと同じですよね。
ああ、そう。illicitly procuring nuclear and ballistic missile technology in Germany. 彼はドイツからそういう技術を輸入してるのね。で、バルティックミサイルは今回のアグリーメント入ってないから。
Technology in Germany, according to German intelligence services, and they've exceeded their enrichment cap. So the fact of the matter is, there are violations. They're not material breaches. They're incremental violations. The president should state that, certify that, and say Iran is not in full compliance. Now, the second step is to say whether it's a material breach, and it's not. It's not a material breach, and you should move ahead with a maximum pressure campaign.
Mark Dubowitz, I'm sorry we're out of time. Mark Dubowitz, Rob Malley, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, this is finally they just looks like American government Trump is trying to stop the deal against Iran, but actually he knows that Congress will not accept it. American Congress. He knows that. So okay, I don't do that, but Congress will not accept because they have common sense. Already Westerners agreement and they just stop sanction. Already they are doing that. And America against it? No, they cannot do that. So Trump speak at those kind of, just, reason is, for my understanding, very simple. He don't like Obama deal. He need to battle against Iran. Iran will get power in Middle East. He don't like it.
No.
Right? So right. This is what his intention.
Because also that is basically it's Russian backup too.
And his character, okay. This is his character, not so much heavy meaning.
So it's more personal than political.
Right, yeah. So this is it today.
It's already time? Time flew.
これ何ソメは今日来れません。お飯行こう。
はい。
これね、もう、今日はあんまり話できない。